So a couple of things that I said about the need for the Treasury to tighten up its processes so that we do not have this constant stream of accusations about so-and-so got $1 billion contract, there were no tenders, etc. Got quite a lot of people asking me to talk about it more because the segment on Astra Awani was 2 or 3 minutes. But the highlight of the headlines that they captured was that I suggested the creation of a central tender board. And I said this recognizing that I can't believe that there is no process of tendering in Malaysia. There must be some. But at the same time, I think all of us Malaysians, if we are honest, can only accept that it's totally broken. Why do I say that? Last month, the Prime Minister, rightfully, said that he was cancelling a contract with, I think it was 7.5 billion ringgit. 7.5 billion ringgit is almost 2 billion US dollars. I know of no country with the aspirations that we Malaysians say we have, where you'd have a government system that allows for something like $2 billion to just be granted to someone who knows someone because a minister said so. Then we've had the accusations recently in Parliament with a lot of shouting where, opposition members of Parliament and various others have accused previous Prime Minister of embezzling billions of dollars, in fact hundreds of billions if I'm not mistaken, and then of his relatives, son-in-laws and mothers-in-laws, etc., of having been granted government contracts. I mean, this is the definition of a banana republic, if this is all true. But this has to be all true to some element. Even if it's half of it is true, it's catastrophic. The question is, how does this happen? We do have a functioning civil service, we have a treasury, we have very talented people in this country. We should be able to stem this. And the reason for all of this is, of course, for 50 years, close to half a century, Malaysia has essentially run the country and the politicians and the ministers who run the country as though it's their little fiefdom, a fiefdom through which they will make money and the rest of us will prosper to some extent, but the plundering will continue. Unfortunately, in Malaysia, that is in the form of a massive rent-seeking political economy. I don't want to go into all the racial elements of that rent-seeking economy, but let's just say it's a rent-seeking economy on a massive scale. The Prime Minister should be commended for tackling this. I can say, and many of my friends and many of most Malaysians, but speaking for myself, it's the first time in my living memory that a Prime Minister has come out openly talking about large-scale corruption and the need to address it in the most strong way, and more power to him. So in the interview, then I suggested that all these accusations and counter-accusations and denials should not even be part of our daily discussions, because there should be due process, prosecutions, etc. But before we get even to the prosecutions, things like a 7.8 billion ringgit contract being awarded without tender should never ever happen. So I suggested, which is what got quite a few people saying, well, that's a great idea. Well, it's not actually a great idea. It's just a common sense idea in any reasonably well-run country that you would have, and I suggested, a central tender board. That there is no minister who can, under any conditions, be awarding contracts willy-nilly to friends and political parties. There can be no system under which political parties believe that the only way they can function is because they get contracts through their members who have now become ministers, who then embezzle the public funds and divert some of the money to their political parties. All of this can be very easily tackled through administrative systems. The struggle will be long. Many Malaysians think, well, why doesn't the Prime Minister just solve all these problems in a couple of years? The reality is it'll take a decade or two to get rid of what has essentially been institutionalized, is systemic. It's everywhere. But what surprised me was the response of people telling me in business, etc., this idea of a central tender board is a very good idea. And Astro Awani thought it was good enough that they made it the key feature of what I said. There are those who will suggest, oh, we have tendering systems and we have tendering committees. We may have, but it should be obvious to everyone it doesn't work. Because if they did work, we wouldn't have billion-dollar contracts being awarded to relatives of politicians. That's what tendering systems are supposed to ensure does not happen. Then people tell me that, oh, ministers chair these meetings. Well, that is the problem. Ministers don't award tenders. The tender board and the process awards the tender. The responsibility of a minister is to sit in meetings, particularly if they are very important tenders, to make sure that the due process has been followed, not to make sure that his relative or political party gets it. That should be the last thing on their minds. And in fact, the process is to make sure they can't do that. And it's all documented. So if a minister chairs a tender committee, it's essentially to ensure that the tender process, and I'm suggesting one that is institutionalized through a central tender board, that process has been rigorous, there's been no foul play, and he or she, the minister, is there to make sure that the process dictates who gets the contract, rather than sitting in on a meeting to overturn the due process and award it to friends and relatives.